Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we're going to take a look at Ultimate Warriorz. There's a Z at the end. I'm sure that's how you're supposed to pronounce it. From Madagot Games. This is a battle royale. You have a bunch of these monstrous creatures like a giant tree ant and a dragon and this little like halfling dude and a dwarf samurai. All of these different lion warrior. I can go on and on. All of these different fantasy combatants who are duking it out in this 3D ring. Like you actually use the box as the ring, and there's like little column pieces that you stick along the edges of the box, and you actually put your characters here and fight it out. And it is just pure brawling with a very King of Tokyo-like feel. I'll mention that in my final thoughts as well. Let's go ahead and get to the overview, then we'll come back and I'll let you know what I think. Alright, let me run you through Ultimate Warriorz. This is a competitive game for 2 to 8 players. I would not recommend playing it with like less than 4 players, which is the setup that I have here. Although you can play this game in like team mode. So you could either have it where, if let's say you are playing with 2 players, you can have each player take control of an entire team of Warriorz. Or you can have, let's say you play with like the maximum of 8 players, you could split the teams into 4 and 4. Each player just takes control of one warrior, but you're all working together to defeat the other team. Now the game is going to end in one of 2 ways. One is that if you're the last warrior left standing, you are the winner by default. But if there's more than one warrior left standing at the end of 7 rounds of play, then you're going to add up victory points. Victory points in this game are actually life points. When you have your tokens here, and when they are on the heart side, they are your hit points. But as people damage you, you are going to give them your tokens flipped over to their laurel side here, indicating that they are victory points. And in fact, the very first time that someone hits you, they get your big victory point, which counts as 3. So in this way, the game incentivizes you early on to spread out your damage and not gang up on one player. And hand in hand with that notion, this is the round tracker, and you're going to move this up as you go from round to round. In the first 3 rounds of play, what these like little stone-like things on the round tracker mean is that if you kill another combatant on one of those rounds, the crowd throws stones at you, which could potentially damage you. And if they do damage you by rolling dice, you're going to toss your hit points out of the game. Nobody gets those points. So you are not incentivized to actually kill other players until you get to the 4th round. Now, each player is going to take control of a different warrior, and there's a bunch of different ones. They all have really ridiculous names. I just have 4 of them out here. I'll just call them by what race they are and class. You have a samurai dwarf, and you have a lion warrior, and you have Baobab. I know this one's name. Baobab, like the tree ant creature, and then you have the biggest one of them all, the dragon. Now, height is kind of an important thing because I think it can be some tiebreakers, but also it kind of tells you what type of fighter you're going to be. The bigger your character is, standee, you are actually going to have more hit points. The dragon has the most at 16 hit points, but the bigger your character is, the easier they are to hit. He also has the lowest standard defense, which is a 2. The shorter you are, you have much less hit points, but you also have more defense in order to make up for that. In order from shortest to tallest warrior, each player is going to put their warrior in a different section of this ring. There are 7 different sections of the board. If you're playing with up to 7 or 8 warriors, some of them are going to have to go in the middle. And obviously I explained this in the beginning, but in case you couldn't tell, this is the actual box of the game, which I'll just tip over and knock all the characters off of. But you're going to flip it over and put so that the characters will stand on the bottom, and you'll put these cool little ring assemblies around the edges. So let me go ahead and fix that. Good enough for now. Each player is going to get their standard character card, which will tell their hit points and their basic defense. You're going to get your hit point tokens, which I've already explained. You're going to get a luck token, which every character gets 1 luck token per game. When you spend it, it's gone. This can force someone to either flip 1 die over to its opposite side or re-roll 3 dice that they've rolled against you. I found that to be the much more useful way to use it. Each player also gets a stack of their eight of these action cards. Now, let's take a look at these action cards. There's a few important things here. Basically, when you play an action card, and every player is going to do this simultaneously, I'll explain that in a minute, it's going to supplant your normal basic card that is down on the table, at least for that round of play, meaning that your defense changes, and then it'll tell you what kind of attack and possibly movement that you can do. But up here in the top is the initiative. So the initiative is going to tell you when you get to act in that round. So let's go ahead and run through that and how that works. Once everyone has got all their stuff and you're ready to begin the first round, each player is going to secretly choose one of these cards. You're going to put it face down, and then you're going to count down from 8. So say 8 is the fastest number, 1 is the slowest. You're going to say, who's got an 8? Okay, who's got a 7? Okay, who's got a 2? And so on and so on. And they, I've got a 1. And then you'll flip that over. And then that person is going to, whenever your number comes up, you resolve it. Now, if there is a tie, this is where the height comes in. Whoever is shortest gets to react first because they're faster than the bigger people. But then you resolve everything there. Now, when I say resolve everything, there's a few different things that might happen here. This is his slowest card, the 1 card. First thing is movement. Now, you can choose to move before or after you attack, but you must move. You do not have a choice. This one has 0, but other ones will have movement rates, and when you move, you're simply crossing from one line to another. So if I moved, I think his name is Zamiculus here, then I would, it is Zamioculcus. I can go from here to here. I can go into the center, and so on. No matter how, depending on how much movement I actually have. Then the card will tell me what kind of attack I can do, whether it's a melee attack or a ranged attack. If it's a melee attack, it has to be in your space. You must attack something that's in your space. And if there is nothing in your space, if you can't get to it, like for instance here I have 0 movement. So if I happen to start off, if I played this card or during the course of the game and there's no one in my space, I can't make an attack. I'm sunk. But some cards will give you both options, in which case you choose one of them to do. And if you do get the ranged option, so here he's breathing fire, then you can attack either 1 or up to 2 spaces away. If you attack 1 space away, there's no penalty. If you attack 2 spaces away, you take a -1 to your dice rolls. Now, when I say dice rolls, what I mean by that is that whatever type of attack I'm making, whatever number it says for that, I'm going to roll that many dice. So if I'm rolling, if I have a 6 for my ranged attack, and I want to attack this person next to me and I'm taking no penalty, I'll just roll the 6 dice. And what I'm trying to get is a number that is equal to or greater than that player's defense rating. And if I do, I score a wound for every single die that made that number. I will take their points, their health tokens, as victory points. If I manage to take their last life point then as victory points, I'm actually going to take their standing and put it in front of me. It doesn't count as points, but it can be a tiebreaker at the end of the game. The only other thing I really didn't explain is that each player also has 2 special cards, which kind of break the rules of the game. They behave different than all the other characters' cards. So, for instance, Zamioculcus is here. This attack lets him make 2 separate melee attacks against 2 different targets. This attack lets him get extra +1 to each of his dice using a ranged attack. And there's a lot of crazy ones. A couple of the players have special tokens, like the tree ant here the baobab has a token or a special ability that lets him essentially command another player not to attack him, sort of. So everyone's going to have something that makes them a little bit more unique than the other players. But that's really it. I mean, you're just moving around, you're attacking, you're trying to eliminate your opponents or just take their life points as sweet, juicy victory points. Either you're going to be the last person standing or the game is going to go on for 7 rounds. If there's more than one person left standing at that point, whoever has the most victory points, whether it's individually or as a team, is going to be the winner of the game. And just to make it clear, you just keep playing these action cards, stacking them one on top of the other until you go through 7 rounds. That is Ultimate Warriorz. Now, let's get to my final thoughts. Alright, so we'll start off talking about the components, as we should with any game from Matagot, because Matagot knows how to make good-looking games. Now, some of their games look better than others, and I would put Ultimate Warriorz on maybe sort of the lower to mid-end of component quality, because there's no really fancy miniatures or anything like that, but the 3D ring is cool. Now, I gave Colt Express a lot of grief, especially during the Dice Tower Awards, because a lot of people were voting for it, and it was just a dumb train that you assemble. And I kind of feel the same way about Ultimate Warriorz, because the ring is not like, oh my god, you're using the box as a ring, it's not like amazing. but it is kind of neat, and it gives the game a nice flavor, so I can appreciate that. And the standees are of a high quality. I like how they have a front and back to each of them. The artwork is really, really solid. I think every Madagot game that I've played has had at least decent artwork, and I think that for Ultimate Warriorz, it looks really, really cool. So I give them props for that. So components, pretty good. As far as the theme goes, I don't know what the story of this is, and it's just like a bunch of monstrous creatures beating the crap out of each other, so I guess the theme works as far as that goes. One thing that kind of bothered me, and I hate to say this because people are going to be like, you're overreacting over nothing, but really, the fact that there are 8 different combatants in the game, and there's not a single female combatant is very weird. It's just weird. I don't know why. I mean, most people go out of their way nowadays to make either an even amount of both, or to give you the option of having a character be, choose a gender of the particular character, or anything like that. Throw us a bone, have a couple of characters in there, but there's none. And that's, unless like the goblin is supposed to be female and it's hard to tell. I don't mean to be speciest against goblins, but maybe that's the case. I don't know. I thought that was very weird, and it's unfortunate, I guess I would say. Now, first thing I'll say as far as like going into how the game actually plays, this is very similar to King of Tokyo. That's like the #1 comparison that I thought of, that everyone I played it with thought of, and it's not an unfair comparison. It's the same type of thing, very light, very random, taking a giant monster, well sometimes giant, and going into sort of a ring type area and trying to beat up everyone else. But while there is a ton of randomness in the dice, just like in King of Tokyo, in fact, it's even more random in this game, because there's not a lot of ways that you can mitigate that, the deterministic way in which you choose your action cards, your role cards, however you want to say it, in this game is really what sets it apart. To the point where I felt like I was playing much more of a game when I was playing Ultimate Warriorz as opposed to King of Tokyo. Sometimes when I'm playing King of Tokyo or King of New York, it's just like, I hope I roll well, and if I don't, I know, there's always like an obvious choice for me to do. I'm not bagging on the game. I love King of Tokyo, I love King of New York, but sometimes I feel like I have no agency in that game. Like there's nothing that I can do. I'm not making a choice or decision. There is a decision to be made in Ultimate Warriorz. It's which cards you're going to play at what point, because of initiative, because of where you are in relationship to the other characters in the ring, and what attack you want to use in that turn. Do you want to use your specials now? That is an important decision. While it's not like a ton of overwhelming decisions that you have to make, that's a very critical one, and I do appreciate that. Now, once you play that card, then it becomes totally random, and the dice can just kill you. That is the fault with any kind of game like this, and I saw some people get really frustrated and just throw up their hands, literally, because the dice were just not with them. So sometimes it doesn't matter what tactic card or action card that you play, the dice are just going to screw you, and that is definitely a fault of the game. Having said that, though, I still really enjoyed it. I love the whole mechanism of choosing your action card, figuring out who's going to act first, having it determined by height at times when there's a tie, which I thought was really interesting. And the whole dynamic, like I mentioned in the overview, of smaller characters are harder to hit but have less hit points, but also therefore provide less victory points, by the way, which is another interesting balancing mechanism of the game. The game sort of encourages you to, in the beginning, to not kill other people, but then after, because the first time you hit someone, it's the juiciest amount of victory points, and then you actually will take potentially damage the first 3 rounds if you kill anyone from the crowd, which I thought was kind of neat and thematic. But after that, it really does encourage you to just attack, and kill someone to get them out of your way. But then again, sometimes if, like, let's say the dragon character or the tree ant character have been hanging around a bit too long, so have a ton of their hit points, characters might choose to gang up on that character. So I love the sort of changing dynamic in the game. All the while remembering that this is not a very complicated game. It is very light, it is very random. I do wish that the characters had more special abilities and more things unique about them, like constant abilities perhaps, because other than your 2 character cards that are special character cards, your turns are going to feel very, very similar to the other players. I may have slightly different stats and defense and attack and defense, range and melee ratings than another player, but unless it's one of my special cards, it really does not feel any different than what the other characters are doing. So that's a complaint as well, and again, the randomness can be a complaint, but still, It looks cool. It's got great art. The 3D ring is kind of neat, even if it's a bit silly. And it's just light, quick fun. The more the merrier. Play it with as many players as possible. That has at least been my experience. I'm going to say that maybe 5 or 6 is the sweet spot for this. But even if you play in teams, even if you play with less players and have control of more characters, it's still a great time. That is Ultimate Warriorz from Madagog Games. Thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.